Welcome to the Deep Dive, your essential shortcut to being instantly well-informed.
Today, we're tackling someone truly foundational.
Absolutely. We're heading back, way back, about 2,500 years, to look at Master Kong, or as most of us know him, Confucius, a figure who honestly shaped so much of Chinese civilization.
It's hard to overstate his influence, really, on everything from government to family life right across Asia.
Yeah.
But, for this deep dive, we're not just going to recite his famous sayings.
No, we want to do two things here. First, understand the man himself, the person behind the legend, maybe the failed politician, the teacher.
And second, and this is crucial, we need to ask, how do we even know about someone who lived that long ago? How do we verify the historical details?
Exactly. So we'll track his life, starting from, pretty humble beginnings, look at his actual career, which wasn't the soaring success you might think.
Then we'll get into the core of his ideas, virtue, ethics, rituals, all that good stuff.
And finally, trace that incredible legacy that stretches right up to today. So, let's dive in. Okay, let's ground ourselves. Where and when are we talking?
We're talking Kong Q, born around 551 BCE in a place called Zhou in the state of Lu. Modern Quofu, basically.
And his early life. It wasn't privileged, was it?
Not at all. Real struggle. His dad, Kong Qi, he was this older military guy, commandant. Yeah. But he died when Confucius was only 3.
Wow, so just him and his mother.
Yeah, Yan Tingzai. And they were poor, which is, I think, really important for understanding him later on. He was technically part of the Shai class.
What was that exactly?
It was sort of this emerging group between the old aristocracy, the nobles, and the common people. But being Shai didn't mean you had money. He was broke.
So less focus on titles, more on just getting by, learning practical skills.
Pretty much. He got married young, around 19, to Lady Kikwan. Had a son, Kong Li, a couple of daughters too.
And his jobs were, not exactly glamorous.
Definitely not. He worked as a bookkeeper, even looked after sheep and horses, basic government gigs.
But these gave him some experience, right? And he was focused on education.
Crucially, yes. He went to schools meant for commoners, learned the famous 6 arts.
Ah, the 6 arts. Remind us.
Right, that's ritual, music, archery, charioteering, calligraphy, and mathematics. It wasn't just about facts. It was about becoming a well-rounded person, a gentleman.
And he built a reputation for being diligent, proper, mourning his mother for the full 3 years.
Exactly. That kind of thing got noticed. And it seems that reputation helped him climb the ladder, eventually landing him a pretty significant role, Minister of Crime, around 501 BCE.
Okay, Minister of Crime sounds important. This is where things get political.
Oh, absolutely. This is where the drama really kicks in. See, Confucius looked around and saw chaos, the central Zhou king, basically powerless.
Right. The spring and autumn period was known for that fragmentation.
Totally. His own state, Lu, was supposedly run by a duke, but the real power lay with 3 big aristocratic families, the Ji, the Meng, and the Shu, always competing.
And Confucius had a plan.
A radical one. He wanted to weaken those families and give power back to the duke. Centralize things, restore some order based on, proper hierarchy and virtue.
And how did he try to do that? Military force?
No, and this is amazing purely through diplomacy. He actually persuaded the Ji and Shu families to tear down the walls around their cities.
Just by talking to them. That's incredible.
It really is a huge diplomatic win. But the Meng family said no. And he made a powerful enemy, especially Viscount Ji Huan.
So the resistance started. And then came the final straw, something about horses and dancing girls.
Exactly right. Fast forward a few years, maybe 497 BCE. There's this important state sacrifice the Duke is supposed to perform, a key ritual. But the Duke gets this gift from a rival state, a bribe, basically.
Yeah.
100 horses, 80 dancing girls.
Oh, dear. So he got distracted.
Completely. Blew off the sacrifice, neglected his duties, and crucially, he didn't send Confucius his traditional share of the sacrificial meat.
Which sounds maybe minor to us, but for Confucius?
It was everything. It was proof the ruler cared more about personal gain, about Li, than about the rituals, the England, that held society together. He was utterly disillusioned.
So he just left?
He resigned, walked away from Lu, went into self-exile.
And that started his wandering years?
Yeah, for about 13 years. He traveled from state to state, looking for a ruler, any ruler, who would actually put his ideas about virtuous government into practice.
Did he find one?
Nope. He was respected, sure, but no one was willing to hand over the reins to someone so focused on morality over, say, military power.
So he eventually came back to Lu.
He did, around age 68, not as a triumphant politician, but more as a respected elder statesman and advisor.
And shifted his focus.
Completely. His last years were all about teaching, gathering disciples, supposedly around 3,000 of them, with a core group of maybe 70-something really accomplished ones, and editing the classics, preserving that old wisdom.
So his legacy became about being a teacher, a sage, not a minister.
Precisely. He died around 71 or 72. A quiet end, but the beginning of something enormous.
Okay, that's a fascinating life story. But it brings us right back to that core question. How much can we actually trust? He didn't leave behind a diary, did he?
No, nothing like that. Our main source for his teachings is the Analects, the Luning.
Which is...
It's a collection of sayings, conversations, little anecdotes. But, and this is the key thing, it wasn't written by him. It was compiled by his students, and probably their students, maybe decades after he died.
So it's filtered through memory, through reverence.
Exactly. We're dealing with secondhand accounts, shaped by people who already saw him as a master.
And Confucius himself was careful about claiming originality, wasn't he? He saw himself as a transmitter.
That's what he said, famously. A transmitter who invented nothing. His big emphasis was on study, on learning from the past.
Which makes it tricky for historians today, right? Attributing specific ideas directly to him.
Extremely tricky. He's credited with writing or editing the 5 classics, ancient texts on poetry, history, rites, and so on. But much of that material was already ancient in his time. Did he edit them? Probably. Did he write them all? Unlikely. So caution is needed.
Okay, so written sources are complex. What about physical evidence? Any statues from his time? Portraits?
Nope, none. 0 contemporary images survive. The pictures we have of Confucius, they started appearing much later, Han Dynasty, centuries after his death.
And they're often quite stylized, showing him eating lousy, things like that.
Right, often depicting legendary events. We do have some interesting early descriptions, though, like one from the Zhuangzi text, describing him as tall but with short legs, a slightly humped back. Not exactly the serene, sage image we might expect.
Huh, interesting. But is there any really solid physical evidence of his immediate impact? Something undeniable?
I'd say the strongest physical proof is his tomb and the cemetery around it in Quaifu.
The Kong.
That's the one. It started as his own humble grave, but it grew and grew. Today it covers over 180 hectares. It's massive.
And it contains
over 100,000 graves, all descendants of Confucius, spanning centuries. That sheer scale, that continuity, tells you he wasn't just some minor philosopher. He founded a lineage, a school that had immediate and lasting importance.
So, bottom line for someone listening, did Confucius exist?
Oh, absolutely. The scholarly consensus is overwhelmingly yes. The main biography we have comes from Sima Qian's records of the grand historian, the Shiji. Now, that was written centuries later.
So details might be embellished, mythologized.
That's the debate, not if he existed, but how much the traditional story matches the reality. But was there a major thinker named Confucius in the spring and autumn period who founded a hugely influential school? Yes. Multiple ancient sources point to that. And to really get why his ideas took hold, you have to understand the world he lived in. It was, well, a mess.
The spring and autumn period, we mentioned the chaos, the fragmentation.
Complete breakdown. The central Zhou king had no real power. States like Lu were basically independent kingdoms, constantly fighting each other. Endless wars, shifting alliances.
And Confucius looked at all this tianxia, all under heaven.
And saw moral decay, social collapse. His big political dream was to restore order, to bring back the mandate of heaven, Tianming. But how?
Through a unified state, led by virtuous rulers.
Exactly. Rulers chosen for moral merit, not just birthright. Rulers devoted to the people's welfare, ruling by example, by virtue.
Which, again, sounds almost modern in a way.
It was a huge shift from just hereditary power, but maybe his most revolutionary act, in practical terms, was what he did with education.
Right. You mentioned he taught commoners.
He's really seen as the first great teacher advocating for, well, public good through education. He started private schools, essentially.
And opened them up to everyone?
Pretty much. He took on students from all backgrounds, nobles, commoners, even reportedly former criminals. As long as they were eager to learn, he made those elite 6 arts accessible.
That must have had a massive social impact, creating a new kind of person.
Absolutely. It helped create the junzi, the gentleman, the superior man, someone educated, morally cultivated, dedicated to serving the state properly. This created a whole new class of potential administrators.
So even though he failed politically himself?
His students succeeded. They became this influential intellectual force. Rulers started seeing the value in having officials who were actually trustworthy, who understood ethics, who weren't just out for themselves. Some disciples got good positions, sometimes with his help.
Because they were trained in his philosophy of ruling through
Karites, proper conduct, and through morality. Ren, his argument was lead by virtue, and people will develop a sense of shame and internal compass. They'll want to be good.
Which is different from just scaring them with punishments.
Totally different. That was the legalist approach, strict laws, harsh punishments. Confucius believed true order comes from within, from internalizing moral duty. That's a much more stable foundation, he thought.
It feels like because his political plans didn't quite work out, his focus shifted even more towards the ethical system itself, making it something bigger than just statecraft.
I think that's right. And it's why we often call him a humanist, more than, say, a spiritual leader.
Meaning he wasn't that focused on the supernatural, God's afterlife?
Not really. He rarely talked about those things.
Yeah.
His concern was overwhelmingly with human beings, human relationships, how to live a good life now in this world, how to build a good society.
Very practical. And his core ethical principle is often compared to the Golden Rule.
Yes, though his is usually phrased negatively, the Silver Rule. Do not do unto others what you do not want done to yourself.
So it's about restraint, empathy.
Exactly. And the ultimate goal, through studying the classics, through practice, was self-cultivation, becoming that ideal person, the Junzi.
Okay, let's break down the key concepts he taught. You mentioned Ren, Elaine. There's also Yi. Can you unpack those a bit?
Sure. Ren is maybe the most important. It's often translated as benevolence or humaneness or empathy. Think of it as the core of goodness within a person.
Like a collection of virtues.
Yeah, it includes things like seriousness, generosity, sincerity, diligence, kindness. It's the inner moral foundation.
Okay. And Elyania, that's rights, but it's more than just ceremonies.
Much more. Confucius expanded it. Yes, it includes formal ceremonies like ancestor worship, but it's also social etiquette, political protocols, how you behave in daily life. It's basically all the actions and forms that express inner Ren and create social harmony. It's the outward structure.
Inner feeling, Ren. Outer action, Elian. Makes sense. What about Yi?
Yi is righteousness or justice. It's about doing the right thing simply because it is right. Not for personal gain, not for profit, but because it's ethically correct, often based on reciprocity.
So acting from principle.
Precisely. But he also stressed that just having good intentions, just having Ren, wasn't enough. You needed knowledge, too. You had to study. Virtue without knowledge, he thought, could easily be corrupted.
And his teaching method wasn't just dry philosophy, right? Music was important.
Hugely important. Music was one of the 6 arts. Remember, he saw it as deeply connected to Elaine, to the rites.
How so?
He said something like, music brings harmony, rites ensure obedience. Music helped create the focus, the inner harmony needed for rituals and for a harmonious society. It tuned the individual.
And poetry, too.
Yes, he loved the classic of poetry. He thought it stimulated the mind, taught you how to interact with others gracefully, and helped develop your moral sense. It was all part of that holistic self-cultivation.
So Confucius didn't achieve his political aims during his life, but fast forward a few centuries, and his ideas basically become the operating system for China. How did that happen?
Well, it wasn't immediate. First, his ideas took a big hit during the Qin dynasty.
Ah, the legalists. Book burning, scholar burying.
Exactly. Legalism was the official ideology then, very anti-Confucian. But the Qin dynasty was short-lived.
Yeah.
The Han dynasty that followed. That's when things changed dramatically.
Emperor Wu.
That's the key moment, around 140 BCE. Emperor Wu made Confucianism the official state philosophy. Confucian texts became the basis for the civil service exams.
Wow. So if you wanted a government job, you had to know Confucius.
You had to study the Confucian classics. This system created a meritocratic bureaucracy, at least in theory, based on his ethical and political ideas. And that system incredibly lasted in various forms right up until 1912.
Nearly 2,000 years, but the philosophy itself didn't stay static, did it? Neo-Confucianism.
Right. During the Song dynasty, centuries later, scholars felt Confucianism needed, well, an update, to compete philosophically with the sophisticated metaphysics of Buddhism and Taoism, which were very popular.
So they added more spiritual or cosmological elements.
Kind of. Neo-Confucianism, led by figures like Zhu Xi, developed a more comprehensive metaphysical framework, talking about principle and vital force, incorporating ideas that resonated with Buddhist and Taoist concepts, even adding practices like meditation or quiet sitting.
And his influence spread way beyond China, didn't it?
Massively. Korea, Japan, Vietnam, their education systems, social ethics, ideas about government, all profoundly shaped by Confucian thought.
Is there still evidence of that today?
Absolutely. In South Korea, for instance, they still hold the Seokjan Daji ceremony twice a year, honoring Confucius and his disciples. And fun fact, some Tibetan traditions actually revere Confucius as a holy king associated with divination.
And how did the West find out about him?
Primarily through Jesuit missionaries, starting in the 16th century. They translated his works into Latin. That's where we get the name Confucius. It's Latinization of Confucius, Master Kong.
And these translations made waves in Europe.
Big time, especially during the Enlightenment. Thinkers like Voltaire, Leibniz, even Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson over here were fascinated. They saw in Confucius a model for a rational, ethical system of morality and governance that didn't depend on divine revelation. A secular morality.
That's incredible. And one last piece of evidence for his impact, his actual family line.
It's truly astonishing. The Kong family, his descendants, have the longest documented family tree in the world.
Seriously? How long?
We're talking over 80 generations now, spanning millennia, dynasties collapsing, revolutions. The lineage continues. There was even DNA testing done fairly recently, back in 2013, that confirmed a shared Y chromosome among different branches claiming descent.
Wow. Talk about a legacy.
It's arguably the most concrete living link we have back to him. That's why the 3 million descendants alive today. Hashtag, outro.
So we've followed Confucius from poverty to, well, political failure in his own time, but ultimately to becoming this towering figure, the sage, whose ideas about Ran and Elgrian really did provide a foundation for social order for centuries.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
He lost the political battles, failed to get that ideal government he envisioned, but he won in the long run through teaching, through transmitting those ideas. His true immortality came as a teacher.
Which leads to a final thought to leave you, our listeners, with. Confucius himself, as we said, was very focused on this life, on practical ethics, not so much on spiritual matters or the afterlife.
Very much a humanist in that regard.
Yet look at how his legacy evolved. In many parts of Asia, Confucianism took on aspects of a religion. Temples were built, rituals performed. This very secular ethical system became spiritualized. So what does that tell us? Maybe about the enduring power of ethical systems, or perhaps about a fundamental human need to connect moral order with something transcendent? When a practical philosophy gets woven into the spiritual fabric of cultures, it's something to think about.
Definitely something to chew on.